Final Fantasy XIV seems to get better with each new expansion, and Stormblood maintains that legacy. The basic structure of dungeons, quests, and primal battles hasn't changed much since 2015's Heavensward expansion, but almost everything about Stormblood is worth experiencing, whether it's the new lands, the 2 new classes, or the fantastic tale that unfolds over the full span of this war-ridden world. Here, at last, the story shows us the sandy battlefields of beleaguered Alamigo. The often-mentioned zone bookends the long leveling experience from level 60 to 70, but in many ways it's a sideshow to the far-flung stuffing in between. Here, in the far eastern areas of Othard and Hungashi, you'll find some of Final Fantasy XIV's most stunning settings and stories. There's the wild plains of the Azim Steppe, where tribes of Al Ra battle in the Mongolian-inspired Nadam, for instance, or the ornate towers and busy markets of the Japanese-inspired port of Kagane. Surprises abound at every turn, even in the phenomenal voice acting and facial animations woven through every memorable cutscene.
I've worked and toiled harder than any man! I'm a citizen, goddammit! And what are you? A stupid, stubborn little dog who'd sooner bite the hand that feeds him and pine for the good old days!
The surprises don't always maintain their initial appeal. The new option to explore underwater zones is initially amazing, for instance, but the novelty wears off once it's clear that there's no specialized underwater combat and that there's little more beneath the waves besides skyscraper-sized stalks of seaweed. I happily experienced all this as a samurai. Along with Red Mage, it's one of the 2 new enjoyable jobs for Stormblood. The samurai is the kind of damage-oriented melee class I've always wanted to play in Final Fantasy XIV, even if it's kind of awful in PvP. Not only is it ridiculously effective, but it also boasts one of the better job stories. The Red Mage is arguably more popular, with dual casting skills as one of its chief strengths. The new combat gauges inject some clear meaning into the ability rotations for both classes. All classes have them now, but it's clear that Square Enix spent the bulk of its creative resources on the Samurai and Red Mage. In the case of the Samurai, perfectly executing 3 sets of combos lights up 3 icons on the screen, which then signal that it's time to unleash a devastating singular-target attack that chops away huge chunks of enemy health. I especially like the system as it essentially becomes a game in itself, particularly when I'm trying to pull off the combos in the brilliant new dungeons and Primal fights, where success demands constant, complicated dances across the battle floor. There's some of Final Fantasy XIV's best encounters to date. There's a visually stunning Primal fight with a god who slams a train-sized sword down on the main tank, who must pull off a QTE event while the rest of the group tries to knock the sword off her. Elsewhere, I fought against a gorgeous goddess who tried to smother us all with love, or something like that. Stormblood is the finest execution of the template Square Enix has largely followed to the letter for half a decade now. Unfortunately, it's still that same template. You'll still eventually find yourself gated out of main scenario quests until you unlock them by leveling up, which generally requires grinding your way through dungeons or the PvP battlegrounds. There's also a massive side quest as an alternative, but they're rarely worthy of the time and effort needed to secure their meager rewards. The Stormblood expansion doesn't do much to shake up the general design Final Fantasy XIV has followed since its relaunch, but never before have its familiar elements worked quite so well. You'll find some boring side quests, sure, but it makes up for that flaw with an unforgettable story filled with moving cutscenes and acting, great new Primal fights and dungeons, 2 wonderful new combat classes, and new zones that reward the explorer in us all. For more on MMOs, stick with IGN.